This is gonna take crackerjack timing, Wang.
Total concentration. You ready, Jack?
I was born ready.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and today I'm going to do the viewer choice comic review for the week. This week the options were Curse of the White Knight, Victor Von Freeze, The Question, The Deaths of Vic Sage, and Absolute Carnage number 5, the finale. And you, the viewer, selected The Question, The Deaths of Vic Sage. I was really excited about this. This is really the one that I wanted to review, but I wanted to give everybody an opportunity to select the one they wanted to see. And I believe this one got about 40% of the vote, maybe a little bit higher. I'm not completely familiar with The Question as a character. I do know that he's the character that basically inspired Rorschach from The Watchmen, Alan Moore's seminal achievement, along with Dave Gibbons. So I was expecting a character somewhat along the lines of Rorschach, but maybe a little bit different, and I certainly wasn't disappointed by this book. I think readers looking for a mystery novel, something like crime noir, are really going to like this. I don't think this is a really fun comic to read like Absolute Carnage is, but it's really enjoyable if you like mystery, if you like crime noir. The writer on this book is Jeff Lemire. He's one of the premier writers in the entire industry. Dennis Cowan, who was the primary artist on Denny O'Neill's The Question series back in the day, and Bill Sienkiewicz are the primary artists. And it's an interesting comic book to look at. I don't specifically like the art very much. It's good for what it is. It certainly fits the mood and the tone of a crime noir book. But whenever the artists render the characters in the story kind of a little bit further back, there seems to be a lot of detail in the characters and the setting that's missing. And I found that kind of off-putting. In all honesty, I would have loved to have seen Andrea Sorrentino on this book rather than the Joker Killer Smile book that he's illustrating for Jeff Lemire, also on Black Label. I think his art style might have been better suited for this book than the Joker Killer Smile book, which is basically just a bunch of characters talking for the whole story. The Question, The Deaths of Vic Sage has a bit more action, things like that. I think Sorrentino really would have thrived under. But, Dennis Cowan and Bill Sienkiewicz do a good job here. It's just some of the detail work that I thought was missing. Overall, I would rate the art about 3 out of 5. It's not terrible, but it's not among the best in the industry. And honestly, I even think maybe Alex Maleev, who did Event Leviathan recently with Brian Michael Bendis, he might have actually been better suited for this book as well. He was ill-suited for that murder mystery, which ended up being nothing but characters talking. I think he would have probably fit this crime noir story and setting a little bit better, even himself. But the highlight of the story is really the characterization, and specifically the main character Vic Sage, or his alter ego, The Question. In the opening scene, The Question is basically raiding a brothel that has some underage girls working there, and it's a really good introduction to the character. You can definitely feel Rorschach flowing through The Question here. He's got some great one-lines, and you really get the feeling that he could care less about people. He's all about justice, which kind of falls in line with Rorschach, from The Watchmen, in my opinion. And the big reveal in the opening scene is one of the men at the brothel is actually a city councilman who works very closely with the mayor. And The Question thinks that the mayor is dirty, he thinks he's corrupt, and he snaps a video of this city councilman at this brothel with underage girls. And then we get another reminder of just who The Question is. One of the prostitutes goes to thank The Question for helping them out, freeing them. And he's quite frankly very rude to her. You can see he doesn't hold prostitutes in very high esteem. And just another reminder of just who The Question is, and he lets the prostitute know in no uncertain terms that he actually wasn't there to save her. The police are on the way and she's going to be arrested too. But the young girl, the underage girl that's at the brothel, she better end up being in the hands of the cops. There's another really good character interaction I want to talk about. It's when we get introduced to Vic Sage, the day-to-day persona behind The Question. And he's a reporter and he's interviewing the mayor's sister. Her name's Myra. And you can just tell by the tension between the two characters. There's a lot of history there that they're not really telling you in this story, but it's a really good back and forth. And Vic Sage is kind of righteous and indignant while she's trying to protect her brother in her own political career because she's also a politician. And this is kind of what's at the heart of the book. It's a question of identity. Does Hub City even need The Question anymore with all the good work that Vic Sage is doing on television and with his investigative reporting? And that idea, that theme, is really prevalent throughout the entire book and is really the backbone of The Question, The Deaths of Vic Sage. There are actually a lot of really good supporting characters in this book, Myra being one of them. There's another guy named Dragon that I'm going to talk about at the end. And then also there's a chemist named Tot who basically makes his mask. And I really like the relationship between him and Vic. And he's really the one that brings up the question of whether The Question is even needed at this point because Vic Sage is doing such a good job. The last character I want to talk about is Wes Furman, the mayor himself. He's depicted as extremely evil in this book. Everything he does is evil and is done with very selfish intentions. So there's one point in the book that's really strange. There's a police officer and he's following two young men as they're driving. He goes to pull them over because they ran a stop sign. And then it gets really ambiguous. You're not sure exactly what happens, but the police officer shoots the young man, and we learn this white police officer shot down an unarmed black man, and it basically starts a race riot in Hub City. And this next part I found really strange. This really evil character, this mayor that is not to be trusted, the first thing that he does when this happens is he goes out in front of the media, in front of the news, and he supports his police department. He supports the police officer in the shooting, saying that it was justified. Now, the event as it's depicted in the comic is really ambiguous, like I said, but this mayor is really evil, and all of his actions are evil, so you almost get the feeling that Jeff Lemire, the writer, thinks that a public official supporting his police department in a shooting is kind of evil. So I did find that a bit off-putting. I didn't really like that, but I do believe that will be expanded upon later on in the story. But as this is the very first book in the story, there's really no resolution to anything, and certainly not that plot point. But at the heart of the question, The Deaths of Vic Sage, is a mystery story, and the question is trying to wrap his hands around all the corruption that's associated with the mayor. When he takes down the city councilman in the very opening scene, he has a ring on that has a very distinct symbol, and when Vic Sage sees it, he feels like he knows it. He feels like he's experiencing deja vu, and he doesn't know why he knows what this symbol is, because he doesn't even know what it represents. So he starts investigating this symbol. He starts putting together the pieces of the puzzle of what this all means. He discovers that it used to represent an old men's society or a men's club back in the day, like in the early 20s. So he discovers where their old building is and goes to investigate, and that's when the story starts tying into the name of the book, The Deaths of Vic Sage, because while he's in this building, he finally sees this symbol, and right next to it is a mask just like the one he wears, and he's really confused. So he goes to see a man named the Dragon, who apparently trained him. I really like Vic Sage. I like the question in this comic book, but without a shadow of a doubt, the premier character, the standout character is Dragon. I don't know anything about him, but he is a really cool, interesting, and very mysterious character that I can't wait to learn more about. And he kind of opens Vic's mind so he can start learning about where this mask came from and where Vic himself, the question, fits into this corruption investigation and why he found this mask next to the symbol that he found on the councilman that he also later found on a bodyguard for the mayor. I would rate the characterization in this book a 4.5 out of 5. Every character is very well realized. They all have distinct personalities, their own flaws. The only thing that didn't really click with me was the mayor when he came out supporting his police department. I personally thought that was a bit of weird characterization. As far as the plot goes, I'll rate that a 3.5 out of 5. Not a lot happens here. It's mostly some discovery as far as the corruption investigation and introduction to some of the main characters, but there's not a lot of meat on the bone on this story. There's not a lot to chew on yet. And I do expect that to change in the second book. But right now, the plot is very basic. It's the opening of the story. So I will say this. I do think the viewers made a very good choice. The question, The Deaths of Vic Sage, is a good book from DC Black Label. There's a lot of intrigue and mystery here. There's a lot of really good characters. If you like character-driven books, character-driven stories, you're going to want to read The Question, The Deaths of Vic Sage, because that's very much what this is at this point. But they're definitely going to flesh out the mystery portion of the story as well. I would rate DC Black Label's The Question, The Deaths of Vic Sage, 3.5 out of 5 overall. I actually highly recommend this comic book. It's not the most fun read in the world, but there's a lot of intrigue, there's a lot of table setting, and you can tell that the mystery is only going to get better in the end. And DC Black Label comes through again with another very good comic book. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.